الجواب देगा بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل Before we start, if I can ask everyone to move as far as possible into the room, so people who are a little late, they can come and sit on the side. Now I'd like to start the majlis with Quran recitation by Brother Muiz Hashmi. By Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا فتحنا لك فتحا مبينا إنا فتحنا لك فتحا مبينا ليدخل المؤمنين والمؤمنات جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها إنا فتحنا لك فتحا مبينا إنا فتحنا لك فتحا مبينا ليدخل المؤمنين والمؤمنات جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها ليغفر لك الله ما تقدم من ذنبك وما تأخر ويتم نعمته عليك ويهديك صراطا مستقيما وينصرك الله نصرا عزيزا هو الذي أنزل السكينة في قلوب المؤمنين ليزدادوا إيمانا مع إيمانهم ولله جنود السماوات والأرض وكان الله عليما حكيما ليدخل المؤمنين والمؤمنات جنات ليدخل المؤمنين والمؤمنات جنات ليدخل المؤمنين والمؤمنات جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها ويكفر عنهم سيئاتهم وكان ذلك عند الله فوزا عظيما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها إذا الشمس كورت وإذا النجوم انكدرت وإذا الجبال سيرت وإذا العشار عطلت وإذا الوحوش حشرت وإذا البحار سجرت وإذا البحار سجرت وإذا النفوس زوجت وإذا البحار سجرت وإذا النفوس زوجت بأي ذنب قتلت. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Thank you for the brother. Thank you for the beautiful recitation. So now we'll have a short salam by brother Daniel Iqbal. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
But Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad Salawat. That's good. Thank you. Pare Digar Salawat. نہر پہ حضرت عباس کے لاشے کے قریب نہر پہ حضرت عباس کے لاشے کے قریب ایک بہن خستہ تنو خفتہ جگر خفتہ نصیب بے نوا بے کسو بے پردہ و لاچار و غریب لیکن اس پر بھی محمد کے گھرانے کی نقیب زرد چہرے پہ ہے بکھرے ہوئے بالوں کی نقاب جیسے جزدان میں لپٹی ہوئی عصمت کی کتاب جا بجا جسم پہ ہے خون کے دھبوں کے نشان جیسے پیری میں اٹھائی ہو کوئی لاش جوان ورم آنکھوں میں کمر خم ہے تو خاموش زبان ضبط کا پھر بھی یہ عالم ہے کہ گریان افغان کون بی بی ہے جو اس طرح سے جان کھوتی ہے جس طرح لاش پہ بھائی کے بہن روتی ہے محویت کا ہے یہ عالم کے نظر ہٹتی نہیں چومتی ہے کبھی شانے تو کبھی جھک کے جبین کبھی تھر آتا ہے لاشا کبھی مقتل کی زمین خوف ہے عرش الہی نہ الٹ جائے کہیں لاش عباس پہ یہ دختر حیدر تو نہیں دیکھیے یہ زینب مزتر تو نہیں رو کے کہتی ہے اٹھو صاحب شمشیر اٹھو حیدر عصر اٹھو وقت کے شبیر اٹھو آل تطہیر کی سوئی ہوئی تقدیر اٹھو کاٹ دو عابدے دلگیر کی زنجیر اٹھو، آگ ہی آگ ہے بھڑکی ہوئی خیموں میں تمام، چن گئی سر سے ردا، جاتی ہوں میں سوئے شام، شان کیا تیرے کٹے بن گئی ہاتھوں میں رسن، سر پہ کیا گرز لگا ہو گئی بے پردہ بہن، تیری کیا جان گئی مارے گئے شاہ زمن، فصل گل ایسی لٹی ہو گیا برباد چمن، چین سے سوئیں گے سب اہل ستم راتوں کو، خوف آدا سے نہ سو پائیں گے ہم راتوں کو، وقت رخصت ہے میرے شیر، اجازت دے مجھے قافلہ چلنے کو، تیار ہے ہمت دے مجھے، خلمن کفر جلا دوں گو حرارت دے مجھے، یعنی تقریر میں شمشیر کی خصلت دے مجھے، رن میں شمشیر چلا نہ تو میرا کام نہیں، شام کوفہ نہ الٹ دوں تو میرا نام نہیں، شام کوفہ نہ الٹ دوں تو میرا نام نہیں۔ صلوات۔
Before I start, can we recite a Surah Fatiha for Marhumin Dr. Sakandat and Sayyida Madat? Bar Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad Salawat. Now reciting his majlis, Hujjat Islam, Sheikh Jafar Ladik to begin the majlis. Bar Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad Salawat. Allahumma salli ala.
For the love of the Holy Prophet Muhammad al-Mustafa, Sallu ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli. Could I ask all the brothers if they can just shift as far towards your left as possible? Because if we can keep the entrance clear, we know that many more people will be coming throughout the program, inshallah. Jazakumullah. We will need 3 ayat from the Quran and 1 dua from Sahifa as-Sajjadiyah. So please open your Qurans to the following verses in this order. The first one that we will need is chapter number 59, verse number 7. Surah Al-Hashr, chapter number 59, verse number 7. After that, we will need chapter number 43, verse number 32. And then after that, chapter number 2, verse 219, 219. We will also need, if you can have it open from now, please, Sahifa As-Sajjadiyah, dua number 30, 30. And if you can scroll down to verse number 12 in the dua, then at least we have everything all prepared at one time together, inshaAllah. Sahifa As-Sajjadiyah, dua number 30, scroll down to line number 12. For the love of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, Sallu ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And for the love of the awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi, Ajjalallahu ta'ala faraj al-Sharif, Sallu ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا الممجد بشير المصدق المصطفى الأمجد محمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وقوله الحق: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويسألونك ماذا ينفقون قل العفو كذلك يبين الله لكم الآيات لعلكم تتفكرون. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, my respected teachers, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا أبي عبد الله الحسين صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. In a previous night's discussion, we reflected on the question of what are the institutions that the community needs. We mentioned that when you look within the Holy Quran, there are many institutional causes that maybe many of our community members are unaware of. If you recall, we reflected quite a lot on chapter number 9, Surah At-Tawbah, verse number 60. And we mentioned that there are 8 institutional causes in that verse, at least half of which we asked the audience, have you got an example of any Shi'i organization within Greater New York that is participating in any one of these different institutional causes? Do you remember that discussion? Do you remember it? Good. It saves me having to go over the ayah again if you remember it. Do you remember some of the institutional causes in there? For example, one cause was ta'lif mu'allafati qulubuhum. There is one institutional cause where when there are enemies of Islam and there may be a practical way which brings us closer together, diffuses the hate towards Islam or the Prophet or the Quran, that needs to be invested in. This is something that the Prophet ﷺ did. This is something that Ahlul Bayt ﷺ did. And there are many, many ahadith that talk about the detail of this. Do you remember that? Or for example, do you remember the issue of riqab? That we are supposed to be freeing people from bondage and slavery. Do you remember that? And we talked about that there is literal slavery that still exists across the world today. Many an au pair, many a worker in occupied Arabia or in Dubai or in the United Arab Emirates, they're working in slavery conditions. Let alone the examples that we gave, those who are captured by ISIS, or the example of when NATO overthrew Libya. There are literal slave traders that are known to the world. We mentioned the Quran is encouraging us. Nay, if you remember in that verse, it actually said what? Faridatan min Allah. That this is an obligation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We mentioned here that in this single ayah, there are maybe some 8 institutional causes, half of which our community is vastly unaware or has not even considered having their presence within. Let me ask a question. Across the Quran and Ahadith, how many institutional causes do you think there are? For example, looking after orphans. It's an institutional cause. It's something that is institutionally demanded by us in the Quran. Not something that we choose, well, now this month, it's the flavor of the month, so we start helping orphans. Correct? It's something that the Quran continuously points towards and calls us towards. Correct? What do you think? What number do you think are the total number of institutional causes that are mentioned within the Quran? What number do you think? That's a very high number, 70. 10? Someone from the sisters? 8? According to my humble reading, there are approximately 25 institutional causes that are mentioned within the Quran and Ahadith. Some of them we are very aware of, and some of them we are less aware of, and some of them maybe we don't even know of, because there are certain challenges that we still have to grow through and mature through. Would it surprise you if I mentioned some of them are supporting prisoners? We mentioned this on a previous night. Some of them are looking after the environment, for example. This is an institutional cause that is mentioned within the Holy Quran. One of them is very interesting. It is actually that if you find people languishing within sex slavery or prostitution, na'udhu billah, there should be a fund that is there to help remove them from that evil practice and rehabilitate them. This is how wide the causes are in Islam. But because we either don't know about these causes, or we are dictated by what the charities of our community are currently doing, we don't have that wider expanse of seeing how the Quran and the Sunnah actually speaks about this particular discussion. Let me raise this question for you, inshallah. I need to tighten it there on this side. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma. Ahsant. If there are 25 institutional causes where we are expected to put our investment in, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that these are the ongoing duties of the Muslim community, to tackle these problems, to make sure we're at the forefront of resolving these issues, it raises a very important question. Well, how do we afford all of that? Are we supposed to just throw money at things? There are enough challenges within our own lives and within the community that for us to be able to say we're now adding more work to our plate, well, how do we raise those funds from the Islamic perspective? Our discussion tonight, inshallah, is on the topic of redistribution of wealth. What is the Islamic system to redistribute wealth? Why? Because if there are 25 institutional causes that at various different times demand our response, demand our participation in, it requires us to be able to fund at least some of those, if not potentially even all of those. Or let me reword it to you slightly differently. If there were 25 institutional causes at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when revelation was revealed, how did the companions of that time raise enough funds to be able to respond to and try to solve all 25 causes? Because if they could raise the funds at their time, then it tells us that we are capable of raising the funds in our own time. If they were unable to raise the funds, then none of us are able to redistribute wealth properly, are we? If the Prophet can do it, it shows us that it can be done. There has to be a methodology. Number one. Number two, one of the biggest challenges of the world that we have, maybe arguably the single biggest issue we could actually deal with in this world, is a genuine system of redistribution of wealth. If we were to genuinely be able to redistribute wealth across a community, across a nation, across the world, then we would probably defeat the vast majority of the problems that we have within this world. I'm going to read to you a little stat, maybe of interest, that gets the brain going a little bit. This was tweeted out and is mentioned by the Hurun Institute, or the Hurun Research Institute, and this is from the 13th of July 2024. So what's the date today? Say again? 13th. So it's from today. So it's as up to date as you can possibly get. Number of billionaires. How many billionaires are there in New York? A lot. Yes, that's a very good answer. Any guess? Not 1,000. 119 billionaires in New York. In London, 97. In Mumbai, 92. In Beijing, 91. In Shanghai, 87. In Shenzhen, 84. In Hong Kong, 65. In Moscow, 59. In New Delhi, 57. And of course, in San Francisco, 52. Just think about that. Billionaires. Let alone how many multi-millionaires there are. If we were to actually redistribute even a small percentage of that wealth, we would be able to overcome many of the problems throughout the world. It's very interesting, isn't it? Let me pose a question to you at a human level. How much wealth does a billionaire really need? I mean, how many houses, how many rooms does a person actually need? But the moment you realize how much of a rhetorical question that is, actually it becomes ever more applicable to any other human being as it does to a billionaire. For a millionaire, you can ask exactly the same question. Well, how many cars do you really need? How many houses do you really need? How many rooms do you really need? How many yachts do you really need? Or let me rephrase that question. Do you even really need one in the first place? The question of redistribution of wealth in Islam goes to the fundamental theological questions of how we live, and actually whether we think that the wealth that God gives to us is actually for me, or whether it actually doesn't even belong to me in the first place. Listen to that question once again and be very cognizant of what's being asked. When you earn anything that you earn, whatever it is, a cent or $1 billion, if you believe that that money is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do you think He is actually giving it to you that it's yours, or that He's giving it to you that He wants you to look after it as per His dictate? Which one is it? The second one. So if the money doesn't belong to you, it belongs to God, and you are merely a conduit for it, why would a person remain a billionaire? Why would a person remain a millionaire? It raises very specific, fundamental theological questions about the way in which we live and the way in which we imagine wealth that reaches us, whatever the amount of wealth. And I'm not picking on billionaires or millionaires here, by the way. In Islam, we don't do that. There's no such thing as pitting wealth against each other. There's no such thing as saying people who are wealthy are bad and people who are poor are good, or the other way around. Allah chooses as to whom He wants to give wealth to. The fundamental question we are asking is that when you get that wealth, do you think that it really belongs to you? Or is there a reason why God gives it to you? What we're going to do tonight, inshallah, is demonstrate the Islamic system of redistribution of wealth. And I'm going to suggest that for the vast majority of you, you've maybe never even heard of this. Genuine question, hands up, how many Maulanas in all of your life have come on the pulpit and spoken about the actual system of redistribution of wealth in Islam? I don't see a single hand up. That's amazing, isn't it? We're talking about a collective knowledge within this majlis. Hundreds of people, thousands of years worth of life and experience collectively between you. And not once have we heard a discussion on how to redistribute wealth around the world, or redistribute wealth in the community such that we genuinely lift people out of poverty. Isn't that a shame? This is where we have reached. That we're still talking about the same things we've been speaking about for 30, 40, 20 years ago, arguing about the same nonsensical discussions, whereas actually there is a real world out there that needs to be forged. And unless we start taking the pulpit seriously and demanding from our speakers serious topics, we will never, never be able to make any growth within our community. Please understand it. Especially when we have the majority of people coming in the month of Muharram. What we're going to talk about, inshallah, is the redistribution of wealth. And what we're not going to talk about is sadaqah. We're not going to talk about khums. We're not going to talk about zakat. Huh? How can you talk about redistribution of wealth without bringing these three in? Because the redistribution of wealth in Islam is not done through any of these three techniques. There is another way that is explicitly mentioned within the Quran and Ahadith. The khums is part of the system. It is not the system in and of itself. What we have come to be told is that if I put my hand in my pocket and give sadaqah and charity, this is redistributing wealth. This is a part of the system and not the system in and of itself. Zakat, khums and sadaqah are parts of redistribution of wealth. But there is a fundamental way that actually demands that those people with wealth ensure that it reaches people who are in need and actually reaches those 25 different turuq, those 25 different Quranic avenues of institutional causes. What I'm going to ask of you is to have your Qur'ans open with the notes And I want you to be able to write it down as we go along so that we can actually start to have this conversation at a very serious level. And that when you go home tonight, inshallah, you have enough notes to be able to actually start thinking about the method of redistribution of wealth in the context of your own lives, inshallah. First things first. Please open Sahifa as-Sajjadiyah to dua number. Which one? 30. From line number which one? 12. Everybody has the dua, inshallah? Yes? Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa alih. Wahjubni anis sarafi wal izdiyad. O Allah, prevent me from extravagance and excess. وَقَوِّمْنِي بِالْبَذْلِ وَالْإِقْتِصَادِ. Put me on the course of generous spending in moderation. وَعَلِّمْنِي حُسْنُ التَّقْدِيرِ. What does the translation say? And teach me excellent distribution. Imam as-Sajjad alayhi salam is saying, oh Allah, teach me excellent distribution of wealth. Immediately it should raise the question, well, what is the system of redistribution of wealth in Islam? And that exactly shows us that Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam have given us these isharat, these pointers, and said, research them. The fact that Imam Ma'soom has made a dua tells us that we should be making that dua in our own lives. Oh Allah, teach me how to be able to redistribute wealth properly so that no one within our community remains poor. That nowhere are there any of the institutional causes that we are supposed to be investing in that go short. So now the fact that we've made the dua just now, let us answer it, inshallah, by teaching ourselves excellent redistribution of wealth. Please open your Qur'ans to chapter number 59, verse number 7. Everybody has the ayah? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. ما آفاء الله على رسوله من أهل القرى فلله وللرسول ولذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل. Whatever Allah has restored to His apostle from the people of the towns, it is for Allah. It is to be spent on the apostle and the nearer of kin and the orphans and the needy and the wayfarer. Now look at this next part of the ayah. This is very, very key to the whole economic system of Islam. كَيْ لَا يَكُونَ دُولَةً بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ. In the preceding part of the ayah, Allah gives a list of different institutional causes. Money is supposed to go for Allah, for the apostle, for the nearer of kin, for the orphans, for the needy, and for the wayfarer. Why? So that it may not be a thing that is in circulation between the wealthy. In Islam, if wealth remains in circulation amongst the wealthy, then that money is not being redistributed to its right avenues. I'm going to be really simplistic. Yeah, just so everybody understands it. Let us just say, for the sake of argument, that in the brothers' hall, this is the wealthy. And in the sisters' hall, they are those who are poorer. If wealth remains amongst you, that you remain rich, and they remain in a state of poverty, and are not lifted out of it by your wealth, then it is against Islam, and the money that you are hoarding and monopolizing will be a fire upon you in your bellies, a fire for you on the Day of Judgment. I'm as clear as I can be. That wealth does not belong to you. The ayah of the Quran is very clear. كَيْ لَا دُولَةً بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ. That wealth is not supposed to stay amongst yourselves. It is supposed to be redistributed properly. But because we, especially in places like America and in Britain, we have grown up in a capitalistic society, we mix capitalism and Islam and then we justify it. The hoarding of wealth is justified as opposed to the genuine redistribution of wealth, which is completely ignored. I didn't say someone can't be rich. Please pay attention closely so that there's no mistake, no one walks out of here misunderstanding my words. I am not saying someone cannot be wealthy. I'm not saying someone cannot be rich, cannot have a nice house, cannot have a nice car, be successful, have 1,000 businesses, be a billionaire. I have not said that. I am saying that the wealth is not permitted to circulate amongst one class of people, that you only remain wealthy and others do not have access to that genuinely. This is the first point that's being made. If anyone doesn't understand that point or needs clarification, feel free to ask now before we move on, inshallah. Wealth is not permitted to remain amongst a class of people. Let me give you a very simplistic example, and you might appreciate it in this way. Traditionally, people are of certain classes. There's no such thing in Islam. People who are wealthy marry amongst each other. People who are poor marry amongst one another. It's very rare that someone extremely wealthy marries someone extremely poor. That's normally a Disney cartoon or something like that. Think about this very carefully. Redistribution of wealth should mean that if you're genuinely redistributing wealth amongst people within the community, the rich would not marry the rich. Why? Because the verse specifically says that the wealth is not permitted to circulate amongst yourselves. It would be that the rich marries people who are less well off, so that that money actually distributes amongst various different classes of people. Can you see? It's a very simplistic way of explaining it to you, but I repeat, if in your families or in your communities the wealth after one generation, 2 generations has remained amongst one class of you, think very carefully about what Allah will ask you on the Day of Judgment about that wealth. We're going to build a little bit more into this. Please open the Quran to the next chapter that I asked you to open to. What did we say? Chapter number 40? 43, verse number? Verse number? 32. Please open the Quran to chapter number 43, verse number 32. We'll come, I promise you we're going to come back to it. This is just the beginning. We've got a whole 2 hours of majlis. I'm just joking. Everybody has the ayah? Yes? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ahum yaqsimuna rahmat rabbik. Will they distribute the mercy of your Lord? Why would Allah give another person to redistribute the mercy of Allah? You know why He wouldn't? Because none of us would be just in it. So Allah is asking, will they redistribute the mercy of Allah? Ahum yaqsimuna rahmat rabbik. Nahnu qasamna baynahum ma'ishatahum fil hayatid dunya. We distribute amongst them their livelihood in this world. وَرَفَعْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ فَوْقَ بَعْضٍ دَرَجَاتٍ. And we have lifted some people above others. Please pay attention. This is really important. Allah says that we, as in Allah, His malaika, we have given some people more money than others. وَرَفَعْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ فَوْقَ بَعْضٍ دَرَجَاتٍ. But why? Have a look at the next part of the ayah. لِيَتَّخِذَ بَعْضَهُمْ بَعْضًا سُخْرِيًّا. Why have we given some people more wealth and some people less? That some of them may help others. Do you understand? Again, I'm using a very simplistic language. If you have been lifted by one daraja and have been made millionaires, and the group at the back have been made poor, Allah has distributed wealth. Why has He done it? So that some of you may lift others out of their poverty. The wealth is not there for you to lavish yourself with. It's not there for you to have something more luxurious than you need. The only reason God gave you that extra money is that you are a conduit for others. You become God's hand on earth. Don't believe me? Read the verse. Why is it you have been given that extra money? So that you help others that have not been given that money. Does it sound like that money belongs to you? No, it doesn't. The whole reason God gives you that money is that you support others by it. It's not there for your lavishment. It's not there for your excess. It's not there for people's boats. It's not there for people's excess. Everybody with me? Two verses of the Quran that are very fundamental in the thinking of the Islamic economic system and redistribution of wealth. Now, there's one ayah that we're going to focus the rest of the majlis on, inshallah. Please open your Qur'ans to chapter number 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 219. And this is the main verse of the issue of redistribution of wealth. The previous two are the spirit of redistribution of wealth. This is the specific of how to do it. Everybody's with us? Everybody's the ayah? Okay. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Yas'alunaka 'anil khamri wal maisir. They ask you, Ya Rasulullah, about intoxicants and games of chance. Say, in both of them there is a great sin and a means of profit for people. Their sin is greater than their profit. Next part of the ayah. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ. And they ask you, Ya Rasulullah, what should you spend? قُلْ الْعَفْوَ. Whatever is in excess, whatever you don't need, you must spend. I'm going to repeat it. Whatever is excess to your wealth, you must spend. ماذا ينفقون. What should we spend, Ya Rasulullah? قل, tell the Muslims, العفو, excess. كذلك يبين الله لكم الآيات لعلكم تتفكرون. Whatever is excess, thus does Allah make clear to you His ayat, His communications, لعلكم تتفكرون, that you may actually think about it and reflect. Hands up. How many of you have come across this verse and noted what is being told to you and I in it? They came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, what should we spend? Look at the question. مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ. Not how much should we spend. Why? Because they didn't just spend money. When they were supporting Islam, they would give horses and camels and swords and various different things. So they asked, Ya Rasulullah, what should we spend? Allah's messenger told them, قُلِ الْعَفْوَ. Whatever is excess. There are three interpretations of this, of which I don't have time to go into all three. But I want to be able to mention one that is the issue of excess wealth. And that gives us the actual system of redistribution of wealth, no matter what level of wealth you have, whether you have $1,000 in your account or $1 billion in your account. Redistribution of wealth is not limited to the rich. It is not limited to the poor. It is about excess wealth. If a person has more than they need, that amount does not belong to you. That amount belongs to someone else. يَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ. What should we spend? Al-afwa. Whatever is surplus to your wealth, that is what you are supposed to spend in the way of Islam. Everybody with me? Everybody with me? Does that make sense at the moment? Let me give you some ahadith to be able to explain this, inshallah. One hadith comes to us from our first Imam, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. Please note it down so you have the references and that anyone can check it in their own time. This hadith is from Nahj al-Balagha, saying number 192. Imam Ali alayhi salam says the following. Imam Ali alayhi salam says the following. Yabna Adam, ma kasabta fawqa qutik, فأنت فيه خازن لغيرك. O son of Adam, please listen to it and then I'm going to ask you to write it down. O son of Adam, whatever you earn above your needs, you are nothing more than a treasurer of that amount of it for someone else. I'm going to write it down, please, all of you. Whatever you earn above your needs, you are a treasurer of it for someone else. Did you know that? It doesn't belong to me and it doesn't belong to you. Firstly, we have an ayah. What should you spend? Al-af. Whatever is excess to your needs, spend that in the way of Islam. Ayah. Hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam is entirely in line, completely in line. Ma fawqa qutik. Whatever is above your needs, you are nothing more than khaza'in, a treasurer for someone else. Incredible system of redistribution of wealth. You see, it's not about whether you have $1,000 or $1 billion. It's about you and I as individuals. Whatever we have to spend legitimately on ourselves, Allah has given you that amount. Once you go above that need, it is not yours anymore. It's not to go and spank on something that you don't need. It's not to go and spend it on something lavish. It's not to go and get an extra 4 bedrooms on the house. It's not to go and get a more expensive car than you don't need. It's not to go and get a first-class flight if you don't need it. If you need those things, and it is actually part of what your actual expenditures are, that's fine. But if you don't need it, it is not for us to be able to spend on those things. That money belongs to someone else. Listen to my words so that you understand it. It is a haqq of someone else. If it is not redistributed to that person, they will come for it on the day of judgment. I'm going to be as simplistic as possible. Let's say in 1 month I earn $5,000. My needs are $4,000. I have a wife, I have a daughter. I have savings, I have investments. I have to put money aside. I can put money aside for nice things as well. That's no problem. I'm not saying don't have a holiday. Please make sure no one misinterprets my words. I didn't say don't go on holiday, don't have a nice car. But my needs are $4,000. Ma fawqa qutik. Whatever is above your needs, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam says, فَأَنْتَ خَازِنٌ لِغَيْرِكَ. You are a treasurer of that amount for someone else. If I don't need that $1,000, it's not for me to go and spend on something that I don't need. If I have investments to make, savings to make. I want to save to be able to buy a house. That's a genuine cost. My money. I want to save for marriage. It's a cost. It's my money. I want to save for a holiday. It's my money. But if I don't, I can't go out and just spend for the sake of spending. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to someone else. Another hadith. This time from our sixth holy Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. La yakmulul imanu billah. Incredible. Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam says, the faith, the iman of a servant of Allah is never complete. لا يكمل الإيمان بالله حتى يكون فيه أربع خصال, until he has four qualities. ويسخى نفسه, يحسن خلقه, noble character. ويخسى نفسه, generosity. ويمسك الفضل من القول, sparing of unnecessary speech. ويخرج الفضل من ماله, and spending the surplus from his wealth. A person will not have complete faith until he spends the excess amount from his own wealth. Everybody still understanding? It's not too difficult? Everybody's got it, inshallah, yeah? If you have any fadl in the Quran, it's called al-afwa. In this hadith, Imam alayhi salam calls it fadl. Fadl is a blessing that is above the ordinary. If you are given fadl, if you are given some wealth that is more than your need, it does not belong to you. It belongs to someone else. You are nothing more than a treasurer of it for someone else. Another hadith. This is in the book Hayat al-Qulub by Allama Majlisi, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi. I'm going to read it to you so you can hear it directly from the work. This is about Dhul Qarnayn alayhi salam. You all know who Dhul Qarnayn is? Who is Dhul Qarnayn? He's not a prophet of Allah, right? He's a righteous individual that's mentioned in the Quran. Quote, on his excursions around the earth, he reached a community of Musa alayhi salam. These people practiced utmost justice. Dhul Qarnayn alayhi salam said, tell me about yourselves. For I have visited the east and the west, the deserts and the mountains and the plains, the light and the darkness, but I have never seen a people like you. Why have you made the graves of your dead opposite the entrances of your houses? They replied, so we never forget death. The moment we exit our house, we see death in front of us. Dhul Qarnayn responds, why don't you have any officers or administrators? They replied, we don't oppress one another, so we don't need them. We don't need judges and lawyers because we don't oppress one another. Why are there no rulers amongst you? Because we don't fight amongst one another. Why are there no kings amongst you? Because we don't exploit one another. Why is there no disparity amongst the people in regards to their economical condition? Quote, because we consider people equal and we distribute equally the excess profits that we have. If I have something more than I need, I give it to someone else. It's really simple. In any other part of life, we would do this. Let us say you have a plate of food. And you put rice, and you put your curry, and you put your salad, and then you put, anything else on it. You know how much your stomach requires, correct? Tell me something. You finish eating to your fill. You have a choice of continuing to fill your stomach. From an Islamic perspective, you can do it as in you can have the freedom to be able to overeat, correct? from an Islamic perspective, should you? Yes or no? No. Now let me rephrase the question. You finished half the plate, that's your stomach's fill, and there is a poor man sitting next to you. What would you do with that extra amount of food? Give it to that poor person. If you did something other than that, what would you call yourself? Or if you saw someone else sitting next to a poor person and he's got a full plate and he's got so much, he doesn't need more. He fills his stomach, but then he continues to, and you sat there watching that person. What would you say about that human being? What words would you call him? What would you say? Greedy. Are you with me? Yes or no? Would you call him greedy? Now think about this. If you are given $10,000 in a month by Allah and you only need 6,000 of it for all of your bills, all of your savings and all of your investments, but you decided to waste 4,000 on excess nonsense that you don't actually need, what would you be called? Greedy. It's not difficult. But what we imagine, because we've grown up in capitalism, this is my money, I earned it. No, brother, Allah gave it to you. Allah gave you that wealth. And if He gave you more than you need, it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to someone else. All you are is His hand to ensure it reaches someone else. Subhanallah, I wouldn't want to be the one that arrives on the Day of Judgment and God says, where was my money? What did you? I gave it to you to go and give it to that poor person who needed it, or that cause that needed it. There was a Sharia cause that required that money. We needed to defend the ummah. We needed to defend the community. And I'm the one who said, you know what? I didn't need a $40,000 car, but to hell with it. I decided to spend the extra $15,000. Why not? It sufficed me and my economic level and my family if I got a $25,000 car. But why not? God gave me extra money, so why don't I just buy a much nicer car? I don't need it, but why not? God gave me the money. No, He didn't give you the money. We are not capitalists. This is not about hoarding. You're not allowed to monopolize someone else's money. It doesn't belong to you. Where did you get this idea from that if I only need a $20,000 car, I can go and get a $50,000 car? Where? Who gave us this idea? Where have you got it from? Do you think the Prophet ﷺ needed a certain level of house and then he just decided I'll get, instead of a 3-bedroom house, a 6-bedroom house? Or I only need a certain type of horse, but why don't I just get a more extravagant one? Or I only need a certain level of clothing. Why don't I buy myself a $400 pair of jeans? Do you think your Prophet did that? Or if he needed only a certain level of clothing and whatever was extra, what did he do with that money? What did he do? He redistributed it. It's not like this is news to me. It's not like this is news to you. I know I'm not telling you something radical here. I'm just actually telling you the system that you've known all along. فَذَكِّرْ إِن نَفَعَتِ الذِّكْرَى. Remind people, because there's great benefit in reminding what we already know about. Now, when we don't do this, when we don't redistribute wealth, Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam say we are the reason as to why people remain poor. Hadith comes to us from our 6th holy Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. And I know there are a lot of students in the crowd, so I'm going to mention this. This is from Man la yahdaruhul faqih. This is from one of the 4 earliest canonical books in Shi'i Islam, meaning one of the 4 most authentic books, earliest compiled by Shaykh al-Saduq rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh. Volume 2, page 7, Hadith 1579. Listen to this hadith and then put everything together that you've heard about the redistribution of wealth. Man la yahdharuhul faqih. Shall I translate it into English? It's actually very important. He who does not have a faqih. If you, Shaykh al-Saduq rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi, compiled the book of hadith that was so easy to understand that if you didn't have access to a faqih, a scholar, you could read these hadith and understand them for yourself. Any ordinary individual could read the hadith and understand it for themselves. Man la yahdaruhul faqih. He who does not have a faqih present. Listen to this hadith. Islamic taxes were made as a test upon those who have wealth. Wealth here doesn't mean millionaire, doesn't mean billionaire. What does it mean? Anyone with, Ahsan, say the word, excess. You have $1 excess, you are wealthy in the eyes of Islam. You have $1,000 excess, you are wealthy in Islam. You have $1 billion excess, you are wealthy in Islam. Wealth is not how rich you are, it is anything surplus. Islamic taxes were made as a test upon the wealthy, as an aid to the poor. Had people given their dues properly, there would not remain a single poor or needy Muslim, and would have become comfortable by what Allah had prescribed. People are not impoverished, in need, hungry, unclothed, except because of the sins of the wealthy. Not rich, people with excess wealth. People are not impoverished, in need, hungry, or unclothed, except because of the sins of those who have excess wealth. If that excess wealth had been distributed to people, to the causes in Islam, not a single person would remain poor. Don't shoot the messenger. These are the words of the Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. All I'm doing is compiling it for you and just telling you it. I'm just reading it to you. One last quote. Have you heard of the great scholar Ayatollah Shaheed Muhammad Hussein Beheshti? Yes? Shaheed Beheshti is one of the great scholars of the last generation of ulama, and also a mutakhassis, a specialist in his Islamic economic system. I'm going to read to you a quote from Shaheed Beheshti, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi. Please pay attention to this quote, and it summarizes everything very, very nicely. Wealth in society is like blood in the human body. Wealth in society is like blood in the human body. As blood should be in circulation in the body, so that all the organs in proportion to their need and position may use it to their advantage, similarly wealth also should remain in circulation amongst all the strata of society, so that its members may maintain their life and be vigorous and energetic. You see, the scholar is very precise. People who are doctors will be able to confirm this better than me. In the body, blood is not distributed equally. Certain organs require more blood to run, correct? The brain, the heart, the liver, the stomach, and so on and so forth. All require slightly different amounts of blood to run. Shaheed Beheshti is saying that in the same way that when redistribution of wealth occurs, the starting point is that different organs in society need different amounts. If you are part of the business class, you actually tend to need more money, don't you? Because you have to invest in starting businesses. That's a fair point, isn't it? If you need to purchase a factory or land or employ 75 people, you actually need more wealth than a person who doesn't need that, correct? The same way organs of the body need different amounts of blood, so too does different people within society. It's not a problem. But if blood is blocked to one organ, so that it does not flow to the other parts of the body in its sufficient quantity, thrombosis will cause serious difficulty. If blood is blocked to one part of your body, does the rest of the body work properly? Yes or no? No. So what happens when wealth is blocked to one part of the society? Does the society as a whole work properly? Yes or no? If blood is blocked in one organ so that it does not flow to other parts of the body in sufficient quantity, thrombosis will cause serious trouble. It may upset the entire system or may even lead to death. Similarly, if wealth is blocked in a particular class of society, many social ailments are likely to develop. As blood keeps the organs alive and enables the whole body to function in a coordinated manner, the same is the case with wealth in society. Without economic equilibrium, members of the society cannot make coordinated efforts which are necessary to save the society from decay and ruin. Incredible, isn't it? If wealth is blocked to one portion of society, that part of society cannot function properly. They spend their time in cyclical debt. They spend their time having to get 2 or 3 jobs. So they're not there present with their family, not there present with their community. The stress is on them. If wealth is blocked from one part of society, that society won't have access to education like the rest. If one part of wealth is blocked to that society, they don't have access to health like the rest of society is. Tell me what happens to that part of society. It breaks down. It breaks down. Rivalries come, violence comes, drugs, alcohol, crime comes, whilst this part of the society is living comfortably in gated housing. This part of society is fighting for the crumbs that this part of society is willing to sprinkle as if it's kindly generous. And I'm going to go further. And please listen to this. This part of the society that's living comfortably, it puts its hand in the pocket, it takes out $100 bill in sadaqah, and it thinks, MashaAllah, look how good a Muslim I am. It puts its hand in the pocket and it donates $1,000 to the masjid. SubhanAllah, look at the good deed I did. What was asked first and foremost is that anything above your need goes there. When you put your hand in your pocket, it's from your money, not their money. Do you understand? Let me re-explain. You earn $10,000 in the month. Your needs are $5,000. What belongs to them? 5,000. If you put your hand in your pocket and you give $1,000 in sadaqah, you say, MashaAllah, look at me, I did so great. Was that $1,000 yours to give them in the first place? No, it was their right anyway. But you've got 4,000 left over. And you think, MashaAllah, I did such a good deed. Look at me, I gave $1,000 in charity to the mosque. I gave $1,000 in donation to orphans. I gave $1,000 in donation to this cause. It wasn't yours in the first place. What was theirs was $5,000. Correct? You with me? If you put your hand in your pocket, now that is sadaqah. You've given the $5,000 over, that's not yours. You understanding? Now you put your hand in your own pocket and say, even though my costs are $5,000 for the month, I will go short a little bit. Here's $250 in sadaqah. That is sadaqah. Because it's coming from your pocket, not from theirs. If it comes from their pocket, it's their right anyway. Do you understand? Are you with me? What happens mostly is people go, oh, I have all this excess wealth. I'm going to give 1% of it in sadaqah. Look at me, mashallah, aren't I a great Muslim? No, it wasn't yours in the first place, brother. Sadaqah comes from your own pocket, not someone else's pocket. Do you understand? Do you understand, or yes or no? Do I have to go through the figures one more time? $10,000 is given to me. 5,000 is my actual cost for everything. My investments, my bills, everything. So $5,000 belongs to someone else. I can't put my hand in my pocket and give it sadaqah and go, oh, aren't I a great Muslim? It wasn't yours in the first place. When I give that excess wealth, and then I put my own hand in my pocket, then indeed, subhanallah, I have actually given sadaqah. That is to be commended. What does the Quran say? لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You will only be righteous when you give from what you love, not from someone else's money. I can't be righteous if I'm giving 10% of what they already is their right. Give them their right, then take from your own pocket and feel good that you've actually done sadaqah. What we've been told is a completely different story. You give $100 here, $1,000 there, ask yourself, where did that money come from in the first place? What part of the system of our own personal economy does it belong to? Here, you can see the different parts of the economic system. Sadaqah has its place. Zakat has its place. Khums is what? Your savings. So now, I earn $10,000. My need is $8,000. In my need, 5,000 is my bills, 3,000 is my savings. I'm trying to save up for a new house. I'm trying to save up for a wedding. I'm trying to save up. So every month I put $3,000 aside. After 12 months, what's my savings? How much? How much is khums? 20% of that savings. Are you with me? Do you understand? Do I have to go through the figures one more time? $10,000 I earn. 5,000 is actually my bills I have to spend every month. 3,000 I put away in savings. What am I left with at the end? What's my excess? What's my excess? No. 10,000 I earn. 5,000 is for my actual bills. 3,000 is my savings. What's my excess? 2,000. So 2,000 goes in excess. Every month I'm saving $3,000. At the end of the year, how much have I saved? 36,000. What's my khums? Ahsantum, good math, 7,200. Can you see? This is the Islamic economic system. Everything has its place. Sadaqah is from your own pocket, not someone else's. Khums is your savings from whatever you genuinely need, and the excess is belonging to someone else. Imagine all the millionaires, the billionaires, all of us, whether we have money, we don't have, whatever excess we had, imagine we actually redistributed it. We would lift the entire community out of poverty in one day. One day, 24 hours, the entire community would be lifted out of poverty if every person who had excess wealth actually redistributed it. There's a lot more, but this gives you a foundation. At least think about it. At least challenge yourself. Review the ayat, review the hadith, and then see your own accounts at the end of the month, at the end of the year. See it. What is my actual need versus what is my actual excess? And very quickly you will see majority of us spend on things that we don't actually need and is actually the right of someone else. Imagine Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam comes to you and he asks you a question. He says, how many swords do you have? You say, I have 2 swords. One is for me. He will say, what are you doing with the other sword? What would he have expected you to do with the second sword? Give it to someone who needs the sword to fight. He comes to you and says, how many horses do you have? We need them for Karbala. He said, I have 2 horses. He says, you use one. What are you going to do with the second one? I'm going to keep it for myself. You say, no, Yabna Zahra, is there someone in your army that needs that second horse? Redistribute it. It doesn't belong to you. Can you see? It's so obvious. but we think in a capitalistic sense. Can you imagine the level of submission that Abbas alayhi salam had when it came to serving Abu Abdullah al-Hussein? It is famously mentioned that when Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is departing from Medina and he is forced into the governor's house, he tells Al-Abbas, wait outside the door. If you hear commotion, then you enter in. Inside that door, the governor is told that he has to take the head of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Imam raises his voice. He says, will you kill the grandson of the Prophet? At this, Abbas breaks through the door. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam places his hand on his chest and says, oh Abbas, stop. Your time will come. Look at the level of submission Abbas alayhi salam has. This is the level of submission that we hope to have when it comes to our own duties towards the Sunnah of Islam. I want you to imagine the tents of Hussein alayhi salam with cries from the children. I want you to imagine Sakina coming to Abbas and saying, oh Abbas, is there any water left within any of the mashq? I want you to imagine how Abbas feels when he hears the cry of Ali al-Azhar, and then after a few hours he stops hearing the cry of Ali Asghar because Asghar has no strength left to be able to cry. I want you to imagine Abbas walking in and out of the tent and seeing a young 3 or 4-year-old boy, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, and thinking, this is my Imam, this is my Imam al-Baqir. He doesn't have any water after maybe a day or 2 or 3 days. I want you to imagine Abbas walking into the tent of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam and seeing Sajjad lying unconscious. Tell me, how does an ill person recover if they are not given any fluids? Can you imagine the heart of Abbas burning inside of him whenever he has to see any of these family members like this? And then I want you to imagine Abbas coming towards Hussein and saying, oh my master Hussein, allow me into the battlefield. And then I want you to imagine Hussein's response and saying, oh Abbas, if you enter into the battlefield, who will command my army? If they kill you, who will command my army? I want you to then imagine Abbas. He looks out into the field of Karbala. He says, oh my master Hussein, which army do you speak of? There is no one left from amongst the menfolk except me and you. Abbas must have said to him, oh master, Akbar lies inside the tents. Qasim lies inside the tents. Onan Muhammad lie inside the tents. Habib ibn Madahir has gone. Muslim ibn Awsa is gone. Which army do you want me to command, oh my master? It is just me and you left from amongst the men. Can you imagine the response of Imam al-Hussein at this moment? You know why? Because his heart must have sank. Before all that time he knew he still had Abbas with him. But when Abbas makes this argument, Hussein cannot reply anymore. Hussein cannot stop Abbas from going to the battlefield any longer. All he can say is, Abbas, if your time has come, then you must go. But how does the heart of Hussein feel knowing that Abbas will never come back? If this is how Hussein felt, how did Zainab alayhi salam feel when she heard that Abbas was going to the battlefield? There is that famous line of Gham that she is said to have said to Abbas, oh Abbas, all my life I was told about this moment when you would leave for the battlefield, but I never imagined that it would come. I never imagined that there would be a time when this would come, because I know now with your departure the fate that is about to befall
Zainab bin Kulthum. I remember when our father Ali ibn Abi Talib used to tell me about Karbala, and he would tell me that there would never be a time when I would be harmed so long as my brother Abbas was with me. But now that I see you going towards the battlefield, I know that the time of Zainab has come. I know that Sakina is going to be slapped and have her earrings pulled off. Oh, Abbas! All this time I wondered what would happen, but now the time of Zainab has come. And then I say to you, if you thought about how Hussein felt, and you've thought about how Zainab felt in that moment, how do you think Sakina felt in that moment? Because she was the one who was running back and forth to Abbas, oh my uncle Abbas, al-Atash, al-Atash. But she knows that when her uncle Abbas goes, that Abbas is not going to be coming back. This is a child who is going to be stuck between needing that water. But I imagine that as much as she desired that water, she needed Abbas with her ever so much more. Can you imagine how the entire tents must have felt? The uproar inside those tents, seeing Abbas upon that horse as he enters into the battlefield. Abbas rides out and he enters into the battlefield, and he uses whatever way he can to be able to fight off the enemy, and he arrives at the banks of the river Euphrates. As he places his hands inside that cold water, he says to himself, "O soul of Abbas, this water is not for you, no matter how cold it is. This water is for Hussein and for the children." And he places that mushk inside the water and fills up that mushk and starts to be able to ride back towards the tents. I want you to imagine that Sakina is standing outside of the tents. She sees the alam of Abbas arriving at the banks of the river Euphrates, and then she must have seen the alam of Abbas coming back towards the tents. I want you to imagine that hope inside Sakina, that she must have imagined that her uncle Abbas is coming with water, and I want you to imagine that she runs inside the tents. She must have gone to her baby brother Asghar and said, "Asghar, do not cry any longer. I have seen the flag of Abbas coming back from the river Euphrates. You only have to hold on for a few more minutes and water is coming." Can you imagine? Sakina must have come outside that tent, that she would not have seen the alam of Abbas flying any longer. What would Sakina have said? Can you imagine Sakina running to her father? "Father Hussein, where is Abbas? I saw his flag coming back from the river Euphrates." What would Hussein have been able to say to his 4-year-old daughter? As Abbas is riding back towards the tents, he holds this mushk in his hands, but the enemy swoops around him from every side. You imagine that Umar ibn Sa'ad must have shouted out, "Do not allow a single drop of water to reach the camp of Hussein. Fire your arrows at him. Throw everything that you have at him." They surrounded Abbas in their thousands. As Abbas is riding, one person comes from the right hand side and slices the arm of Abbas off, and then a person comes from the left hand side and cuts the arm of Abu Fadl Abbas off. At this point they begin to shower arrows. The Maqtal says that 4,000 arrows were shot towards Abu Fadl Abbas. Can you imagine how many arrows hit him? Amongst those that hit him is the arrow that hit Abbas inside the eye. With the amount of arrows that hit him and his horse, Abbas is in slumber upon his horse, but in this moment someone comes from behind. He brings a mace and hits Abbas on the head. Abbas falls towards the ground. There is a story from amongst the Maqtal that says that one of the ulama was reciting the Maqtal of Abu Fadl. He recited the Gham, and that night he went to sleep, that he saw in his dream Fatima Zahra. Zahra said to him, "Oh dear Shaykh, you recited the Gham of my son Abbas, but you did not recite the most grievous part of his Maqtal." He said, "But I recited that his arm was cut off. I recited that his other arm was cut off." She said, "No, when every other martyr fell from their horse, they had their arms to break their fall. There is an arrow in the eye of my son Abbas, that when he fell upon his face." When Abbas fell towards the floor, the enemy surrounded him and cut him to pieces. This is why when the ulama had to rebury Abbas alayhi salam, when water was entering into his grave, one of the ulama stood shocked. They said, "I always heard that Abbas was such a tall man that when he sat on the horse, his feet was dragging along the ground." One of the ulama sat down by the grave of Abbas and started to cry. "I have heard because he is being cut to pieces, that's why his grave is so small." I want you to imagine that every other of the shuhada called out, "Hussein, come to my aid." Abbas knows that if he calls out for Hussein, Hussein's heart will be broken. That if Hussein hears the call, that even Sakina will hear the call. Even Zainab will hear the call. Maybe Hussein heard, maybe Hussein knew, but I want you to imagine Hussein trying to walk towards Abbas. I want you to imagine how he arrives at the broken body of Abbas alayhi salam, and then he places the head of Abbas on his lap. The tears are streaming from the eyes of Hussein. All he can call out is, "Oh Abbas, now my back has been broken." I want you to imagine Abbas being able to do the last ziyarah of his brother and master Hussein. And then I want you to imagine Abbas's last concern. His last concern was for Zainab and Sakina. All he could say is, "My master Hussein, do not take my body back towards the camp. I don't want Sakina to see me in this state." Even his last moments he has concern for Sakina bint al-Hussein. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. ماتم حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين
Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein.
Bawafa ya Abbas, Bawafa ya Abbas, Bawafa ya Abbas. Salam Ghazi, Salam Ghazi, वफा का तू है इमाम गाजी. सलाम गाजी, सलाम गाजी, वफा का तू है इमाम गाजी. सलाम गाजी, सलाम गाजी, वफा का तू है امام غازی. جگہ جگہ ہے علم گواہی، دلوں پہ تیری ہے بادشاہی. جگہ جگہ ہے علم گواہی، دلوں پہ تیری ہے بادشاہی. لبوں پہ تیرا ہے نام غازی، وفا کا تو ہے امام غازی. سلام غازی، وفا کا تو ہے. حسین مولا سے پیار کرنا، حسین پر جان نثار کرنا. حسین مولا سے پیار کرنا، حسین پر جان نثار کرنا. یہی ہے تیرا پیام غازی، وفا کا تو ہے امام غازی. سلام غازی، سلام غازی، وفا کا تو ہے. جو تیرے بازو قلم نہ ہوتے، اسیر اہل حرم نہ ہوتے. جو تیرے بازو قلم نہ ہوتے، اسیر اہل حرم نہ ہوتے. نہ جاتی زینب یوں شام غازی، وفا کا تو ہے امام غازی. سلام غازی، وفا کا تو ہے. غلام شرمندہ ہے یہ مولا، نہ لاش خیموں میں لے کے جانا. غلام شرمندہ ہے یہ مولا، نہ لاش خیموں میں لے کے جانا. طلب بے تیرا کلام غازی، وفا کا تو ہے امام غازی. سلام غازی، سلام غازی، وفا کا تو ہے امام غازی. با وفا یا عباس، با وفا یا عباس.
What وجزا.
What wajiza? Ready? Can I repeat with you? I'll repeat.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة، وعلي بن الحسين زين العابدين، ومحمد بن علي الباكر، وجعفر بن محمد الصادق، وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم، وعلي بن موسى الرضا، ومحمد بن علي الجواد التكي، وعلي بن محمد الهادي النكي، والحسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا حجة بن الحسن القائم المنتظر المهدي، يا صاحب العصر والزمان، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.